reading from the letter of Paul to the Philippians. Brothers and sisters, Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me, life is Christ, and death is gain. If I go on living in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me. And I do not know which I shall choose. I am caught between the two. I long to depart this life and be with Christ, for that is far better. Yet that I remain in the flesh is more necessary for your benefit. Only conduct yourselves in a way worthy of the gospel of Christ. The word of the Lord.
Our second reading this Sunday comes from the letter of Paul to the Philippians. And again, we have this experience of at one point saying to myself, yes, I understand Paul. But after reading through the whole text, you say, do I really understand him? Just like in the first reading, the thoughts of God are not quite the same as our thoughts. And God's ways are not our ways, and our ways are not God's ways. We conclude sometimes that we understand God and His Word, but do we truly understand? And here we have an example of a fellow human being, but nevertheless quite different, because he had this unique experience of being called by God to be an apostle, Paul. And Paul in this passage tells us that he is quite indifferent to life or death. Whether it is life or death doesn't matter to him. I'm tempted to tell Paul, hey, come on, of course you want to live. What person would say, okay, I'm indifferent to it. If death comes, I'll just die. If I'm asked to live, then I continue living. Of course, we have a desire, and our tendency is towards life. But St. Paul here doesn't seem to be fooling us. He is sincere. Why? Because for him, life is Christ. Life is not just breathing. Life is not just existing here on earth. For him, life is Christ. And if life is Christ, dying, especially if it is dying with Christ and for Christ, is not a loss. It is gain, actually. Now, this transports us to a different realm of understanding. I want to tell Paul, hey Paul, your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your ways are not my ways. And Paul might say, yes, you will discover my thoughts and my ways only if you can say with me that Christ is life. Life is Christ. So for someone who has made God his life, and in the case of Paul, who has made Christ his mission, generosity is the rule of life. Whether I am asked to offer my life by continuously living here on earth as a missioner, I will give my all. I will offer my life. I will die for my mission. But if God wants me to die and be with Him, I will obey. St. Paul is saying, in fact, that would even be better. I will leave the turmoil of this world. I will leave the anxiety of mission and be with God. But if God desires that I continue working here on earth, even suffer for my mission here on earth, I will do it. I accept it. Because whether it's life or death, for as long as it is Christ, it is life. This is hard to understand. But this is the generosity of someone who has been captured by Christ and who is so consumed by Christ, consumed by the mission to make Christ known. This type of person will now operate on a different level of thinking, quite different from our normal ways of thinking and judging things. And this person will be operating on a different level of generosity. Our normal ways of being generous is still calculating. We calculate how much we have already given. And when that person asks for more, we say, wait a minute, I already gave you last week. And we do not find anything wrong. In such calculation, we still think of ourselves as generous. But for someone like St. Paul, for whom life is Christ, generosity, life, death, they all mean quite different things from our ways of conceiving them. Your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your ways are not my ways. God is generous. Paul is generous. What does it mean to be generous?